not uncommon for Joyce and I to put in a 16-hour day on a regular basis. It's pretty normal for us. With all that we have going on, it's really difficult when you run your own business and you're also a pastor, which means you're on call all the time. It's really difficult for us to know when to put the closed sign up. When do you say when? When do you say, okay, I'm stopping now? It's a challenge, and our day usually begins at 5 o'clock in the morning with the blaring of the alarm clock. On Monday through Wednesday, I'm at our factory from, I get in there a little bit before 6, and I don't usually get out of there until after 6, at least 6 that evening, but usually after. And interspersed amongst all of that is dealing with a variety of pastoral duties that crop up. And when I get home at night, I'm usually working on a sermon or homework from Ohio Christian University. And then Thursday through Saturday, we're usually doing our cooking school classes, though we have begun to take one of those days off starting January 1st. We've been trying to take at least one of those days off. But on those days, I'm still up at 5. And so at 5 o'clock, I'm now doing sermons and homework in the morning because I'm going to go into the kitchen about 10, and I'm probably going to be there till about 10 or 11 that night before I get out. And then Sunday mornings, I take it easy. Not. I'm usually here. So Sunday mornings, I'm here doing what God has called me to do. And it seems like most days, all we accomplish is do. And there's always more work to be done than there are hours in the day. Now, Joyce and I have been working at finding a way to take a true Sabbath each day of the week. So we started by, as I said, taking a day off from doing classes once a week, and that's the beginning of that. We know and we're quite aware that we need to take care of ourselves, and we need to take care of our relationship with one another, and we would encourage you to do the same thing. And so that's why we schedule for ourselves. We schedule a date night every Tuesday night. And so some of you, if you try to text me or call me on Tuesday night, if I don't respond, that's why. That's date night. We just sort of carve out some time there that's just for us. This past week, I got home about 7 o'clock. I took care of some last minute items that had cropped up, and then we sat down and we kind of caught up real quick on each other's day, and then we just said, turn all that off. It's date night now. I think between 7 and 8 we did all that, and 8 o'clock we were like, okay, we're done. Work's done, no more shop talk, let's just settle in and have a quiet evening together. And so we turned all that off and we settled in. We had a little dinner, we were watching a couple of movies, and just kind of taking it easy. But somewhere during the second movie, Joyce got up to fix us a snack. And so while she's fixing a snack, she's over on one side of the kitchen, I'm over in the family room, she's fixing a snack, I reach over and turn my phone on, and I'm checking messages. And she turns around and she says, "What are you doing? Turn that off." See, she knows how I am, and so that's our time. And I was robbing. I said, I thought, well, it won't hurt to look a little bit, because she's making a snack. So I got to. No, it didn't work that way. When your life is so ingrained to do and do and do, it's hard to do nothing. See, I'm a doer. And there's nothing inherently wrong with being a doer. If we didn't have doers, nothing would get done. When Jesus says that he has not come to abolish the law or the prophets, he is affirming that there is a place for law in this world. And the law is about doing. It's about practicing righteous living by following the commandments of God. We need the law so we can know what to do and what not to do. When Jesus says that he has come not to abolish the law but to fulfill it, I think he's suggesting that being his disciple is not as much a matter of doing as it is a matter of being. So I want you to follow along as I share our text this morning. We're still digging into the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew chapter 5. Jesus says there in verse 13, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law, until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven." The people of Israel were facing huge changes during the time of Jesus. The religious climate of the Jews was changing. The social climate of the people was changing. Various factions began to spring up. Political and ideological factions all had a different idea about the future of Judaism. And these different factions were often in conflict with one another. The Pharisees didn't like the Sadducees. The Sadducees didn't like the Pharisees. And the Essenes didn't like anyone. The influence of Roman rule had people turning on one another. The present was unstable, and the future didn't look too good either. Likewise, we're living in a time of major change. Around our country, people are at odds with one another. Political and ideological factions today all have different ideas of what our country should be on a great many issues. The church is struggling also. Most churches are in decline. And even the United Methodist Church, we have various factions at odds with one another right now. People are trying to redefine what it means to be Methodist and Christian in the midst of all the culture change that's going on. Our present is unstable, and our future doesn't look too good either. So how are we as disciples of Jesus Christ supposed to act in this kind of environment and culture? How are we to live and practice our faith? How are we to share it with others? Jesus says we are to be the salt for the world. Some followers of Jesus are good at spreading the salt, but for God our job is to be the salt. When our food tastes bad or has no flavor at all, we season it with salt, and that salt makes it more palatable. Jesus says in a world that is hard to chew on, that we are to be the seasoning that makes it more palatable. We are to be salt, not do salt. In a world filled with darkness, despair, and dissension, Jesus says that we are to be light. We don't turn on the light. We are the light. Jesus is asking us to shine God's grace into that darkness. Our being a disciple is to be so obvious that through our presence, the very presence of God's love and grace is noticed and felt by everybody around. So often we get caught up in the do, that we ignore the importance of the be. So what does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus Christ? How do we enhance the flavor of God's love in the world? How do we let God's light shine through us in the darkness? Like many of you, I utilize social media quite a bit to interact with the world. I don't post a lot, but I do read a lot. For the past year, I've read so many hate-filled messages from one person about another or from one group about another that honestly, it makes me upset and angry to see so much ugly in the world. The people posting are usually people that are misinformed, and they're just spewing out leftover garbage that they saw someone else post, or they're reacting to something they saw online or heard secondhand. Even the news media reports secondhand information without ever checking the source. You can't even trust them. It's as if we want to be the loudest person in the room, not the most accurate. When I read or hear things like that, I really want to begin my own rant and give them all a piece of my mind. But then I remember that I'm called to be salt and light to the world and not lighter fluid. So as you look at the world, and more importantly as you look at your community, what does it mean to be the church? I posted something on our church page this past week that some of you may have read, and you may have wondered what I meant by it, and I'm going to guess that by the lack of response, you thought it was a trick question, so you just stayed silent. But I simply ask a question. Is a person a fisherman if they never fish? Is a person a fisherman if they never fish? And I was inspired to write that question from a book that I was reading on making disciples. And in the book, the author was discussing the difference between doing church and being church using a fishing parable. And I'm going to read part of that parable to you this morning. Now it came to pass that a group existed who called themselves fishermen. And lo, there were many fish in the waters all around. In fact, the whole area was surrounded by streams and lakes filled with fish, and the fish were hungry. Week after week, month after month, and year after year, these who called themselves fishermen met in meetings and talked about their call to go about fishing. Continually, they searched for new and better methods of fishing and for new and better definitions of fishing. They sponsored costly nationwide and worldwide congresses to discuss fishing and to promote fishing and hear about all the ways of fishing, such as the new fishing equipment, fish calls, and whether any new bait was discovered. These fishermen built large, beautiful buildings called fishing headquarters. The plea was that everyone should be a fisherman and every fisherman should fish. One thing they didn't do, however, they didn't fish. Now the author goes on with a lot of other examples in the parable, but I want to skip to the end, and it reads like this. Now it's true that many of the fishermen sacrificed and put up with all kinds of difficulties. Some lived near the water and bore the smell of dead fish every day. They received the ridicule of some who made fun of their fishermen's clubs. They anguished over those who were not committed enough to attend the weekly meetings to talk about fishing. After all, were they not following the Master who said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men"? Imagine how hurt some of them were when one day a person suggested that those who don't catch fish were really not fishermen, no matter how much they claimed to be. So how can we be the church? Well, we can start by being a fisherman that fishes. There are people all around us that do not have a relationship with God through Christ. They're looking for hope. And they're looking for that hope not from hypocrites or do-gooders, but from people that exemplify that God is present in their life. People that truly know what it's like to be loved by God and forgiven of their sin. Grateful people. Grace-filled people. Love-filled people. How can we be the church? As we see families hurting and in trouble, we need to become the support they need in whatever capacity God has gifted us to be that. And a lot of times, folks, it just means you're just going to listen. When people are hurting, you just sit and listen and let them pour their heart out to you. For a lot of those families, it means that you're going to sit down and pray with them or pray for them. One of the easiest things for you to learn to do is just to ask someone, how can I pray for you today? How hard is that? How can I pray for you? When they tell you something's going on or they're struggling with something, ask them, well, how can I pray for you? Or can I pray for you about that? And we can encourage them. Maybe it's just an arm around their shoulder. Maybe it's a hug. Maybe it's just a kind word. Maybe it's just tell them, I'm here for you. And we can lift them up when they've fallen. When everyone else wants to walk past and ignore them, we can be the person that reaches down like the Good Samaritan, lifts them up, binds their wounds, and takes care of them. Sometimes our role is not to do. It's just to be. How can we be the church? Well, when the world is throwing insults at one another, we can be the church by our love for one another. Don't draw lines in the sand and join in the bickering. Let your lips be used to share life and light. Be the seasoning that makes this world taste better. As we consider what it means to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, what we need to take away from this teaching from Christ is that it isn't our job to bring someone into a relationship with the living Christ. It is God's job alone to convert the heart of the sinner. Our role is simply to be witnesses. Just be witnesses. We are vessels of God's unfathomable love and grace, and our responsibility is to be salt that seasons the world. Our responsibility is to be a lamp through which God's light can be seen. And the best way for us to do that is just to be the church that is transparent enough for the heart of God to be seen. Not a phony facade of what we think a Christian ought to be. Not somebody who puts on a mask. Not someone who puts on a show. But just to be that transparent individual where the heart of God can be seen.